let's get to it. What I'd like to do right now is I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker and our guest speaker. Most of you are very familiar with past District Governor Bruce Goldsen and his wonderful wife, Sue, and their passion and their contributions for Rotary. I know many of you are familiar, but Bruce has been a Rotarian for more than 30 years and was district governor in 2008 and 2009. He's also past chair of the Rotary International Youth Exchange Committee. He chaired the Youth Exchange pre-conventions in Atlanta, in Toronto, in Hamburg. In addition to running their own media consulting firm, Bruce and Sue are also major donors. They're Paul Harris Society and Bequest Society members of the Rotary Foundation. They've traveled to Ghana, to India, to El Salvador, working on Rotary service projects. Bruce is also the past president of Adrian Noon in the morning Rotary clubs. He's currently the charter president of the Passport to Service Club in District 6400. He's also an expert in all things Rotary and all things technology. No pressure, Bruce. And he has found wonderful ways to blend both of them to continue the great work of Rotary. I could go on and on with the many accolades, the many awards and the like that Bruce has and the many things that Bruce has done for Rotary. But I recognize that an introduction should never be longer than the presentation. So I am going to stop right there and I'm going to welcome past District Governor Bruce Goldsen, and thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you, and good morning, Rotarians. It's actually a testimony to what Sue and I have been talking about for years in Rotary, flexibility, because this is my first Zoom presentation. I mean, I've been on countless Zoom meetings over the past year now. This is going on a year, but I have actually never done a full-blown Zoom presentation before. So let's give it a shot and see what we can accomplish this morning. And, as usual, when I do a presentation, normally for district assembly, I'd be running around the room at Schoolcraft College and throwing microphones in your faces and asking you questions. And I just can't resist the opportunity to ask some questions. So let's start with asking some questions this morning. And here's number one. How did your club fare during the pandemic? So I want you to think about that for a second. And there's 4 choices that you have this morning. Number one, we thrived. We killed it. We did so well during this pandemic. We were everywhere, everything. We didn't skip a beat. And people love knowing that the Rotary Club, wherever it is, was in charge and doing the right things. That's choice number one. Choice number two, we did okay. We still had some meetings. We still did a few things in the community. We held our own. Choice number three, it was tough. We had a little bit of a challenge trying to do our service projects. We had a little bit of a challenge getting our members to want to come into our meetings on Zoom, but we're still around. And choice number four, we just said goodbye. And we either took a pause or we really decided that this just wasn't for us. We packed up our toys and we went home. So question number two, what did your club do? Well, option one, we figured we'd wait until we got the all clear. I mean, how long could that possibly be? Number two, we moved our meetings to an online platform. We Zoomed like we've never Zoomed before. Choice number three, we kept our meetings in person, abiding by government guidelines, of course. Looks like fun. That's COTM, I think, meeting back in the fall. Now, the problem with that picture is it didn't work so well in January, February, and early March. And option number four, we kept meeting just like we always had. What pandemic? So there were some pandemic lessons for Rotary that we had, and these are just a few of them. If your club was already struggling, it was struggling even more during the pandemic. See if any of these held true for your club. Clubs that knew they had issues, but they were willing to address them, found that there could be new ways of doing their good work in the community. Or number three, clubs that had previously embraced innovation and evolution did very well, and other clubs wanted to do the things they were doing. Let's talk a little bit about some of those things. There was actually one really, really important lesson. The traditional definition of what a Rotary Club was got completely turned upside down. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, a few things. Weekly meal with a guest speaker. You could have the weekly meal maybe, or maybe not, depending if somebody was hungry when they were at home on Zoom. Guest speaker didn't have to be from the local community. Guest speaker could have come in from anywhere in the country, in the continent, or in the world. But the big lesson about how the traditional definition of what a Rotary Club is changed because geography didn't matter. The traditional Rotary Club was like that Anytown video showed you, it was in a town. Matter of fact, the rules in Rotary, of course, we know that the rules in Rotary have, many of them have just been thrown out the window, but the rules in Rotary for the longest time said you must live or work in the community of your Rotary Club. That rule doesn't exist anymore. Our Passport to Service Club, you can belong from any country in the world to our club, be a member of District 6400 because they still have to belong to districts, but it simply, there's no more geographic boundaries in Rotary. Going the wrong way there. There we go. The downside of the pandemic for Rotary clubs. Well, no in-person meetings meant less personal connections. And in fact, it was a big problem in attrition for our club members, especially the long-timers, because they looked forward most of all to just getting together with the other folks every week. And when they didn't have a chance to see them on a weekly basis, it was more and more difficult for them to remain involved in what the club was doing. Lockdowns, restrictions, they made it really difficult to do service projects or do fundraisers. Even our Passport Club, which doesn't have that geography barrier, we've struggled to figure out how to do those two things because Passport Clubs encourage their members to work with local Rotary clubs wherever they may be. We have members in Canada, members in Atlanta, members in Michigan, members in Connecticut. We're all over the place. Your members had a difficult time because they couldn't get out to do the things that we do so well as Rotarians. And they simply lost interest because engagement was so challenging. So for those of you who did Zoom meetings this year, see if any of these are familiar to you. This happened every week, no matter what meeting I was on, somebody had a challenge with how to use the technology, how to find where the meeting was, when the meeting was, and these were some of the struggles that we all dealt with. But those were downsides of the pandemic for Rotary clubs. There were a lot of upsides. Many of those meeting limitations that we had in our traditional meetings just went bye-bye. We could get guest speakers from anywhere. Our Passport Club last week, our guest speaker was from Israel. He's in Israel. He's 18 years old. He's amazing. Current members needed something to do and more could attend because they weren't working remotely or they weren't working at all. So it really didn't matter, you know, the limitation against getting out to a club meeting because I can't get away from work, that one kind of went out the window as well. And it was often easier to get prospective members to join because all they had to do was get a Zoom link to log in. We didn't have to like arrange to meet them at this time and get them into the building and get them situated in the meeting room and, you know, all those things that we normally had to do for our meetings. Now it was just log on to Zoom. And at first that was a challenge because nobody knew what Zoom or whatever the online platform you're using was. But over time, we were all forced to learn what those things were. So because I'm pretty good at sharing my opinions, here's a Bruce opinion. See if this holds true for you and for your club. There were a lot of things that through inertia, we just kept doing and keep doing in Rotary because they were convenient or because it was easier to do it that way. And all of a sudden during this pandemic, we were forced into doing things that we should have done, but we just never had the energy or the need to do. So we talked about using tools as a technology as a tool for action. And I'm not about the fact that, you know, we're just going to talk. This is not a tech talk this morning. This is about how you harness the use of those tools to do great things for your Rotary Club and for your community, whatever the definition of that community is. And I borrowed from a Rotarian in our district with, it's not about the tools, it's about what the tools can do here. And you'll see some of those tools that are on the screen. Now, one of the challenges of these tools is that it's really difficult to become an expert in using those tools. But you need to have an arsenal of these at your disposal, and then you have to figure out who's going to be the person who's going to wield the hammer. Sue and I just did a big renovation project on our house, and I didn't go and do all the work myself because I knew, and she knew more than I did, that would be a disaster. But you have to get the people who know how to wield those tools. So it's really, more importantly, not about the tools, but it's about what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? And there are lots of different things you may want to accomplish, like attracting new members. Maybe that's your goal. Maybe it's attracting younger members, which we hear about all the time. That's a different set of tools. Attracting non-traditional members, the kind of people that wouldn't necessarily ever come to a physical meeting at one location, or communicating with your existing members. Did you find that a challenge during the pandemic? You know, we have DAC-DB, we have email, we have a telephone, but communicating with existing members it's got to be, we've talked about communication issues for years, and when is too many emails, you know, when we keep just sending email every time we think of something, because after a while, people just get tired of looking at emails. So the communication piece and how you do it is a really, really critical part of being able to work with your club members. And it's engaging existing members. That's a whole different arsenal of tools that you need than just attracting new members, which could be outreach through Facebook, for example. And then reaching out to people who used to be members. Well, maybe they dropped out because your meeting time wasn't convenient, or getting away from work wasn't convenient. Well, now we might be able to get them back, especially if service was their main interest, more so than friendships and fellowships. Or is promoting to what you do in the community the critical piece of your goals here? Telling people about the fundraiser that you've got coming up, or the service project that you did to help out in your town. That is a different set of tools than trying to attract younger members would be. And again, you don't have to know how to use every tool, but you have to be able to find people who can do that, because there are different tools for all these different things. And you have to be able to target your tech to people so that you can reach them in the right venue. Because technology, as we know, is always changing. 10 years ago, what was a Facebook? 10 years ago, what was LinkedIn? 10 years ago, there was nothing such as YouTube that anybody paid any attention to. And now these have all become like daily parts of what we do in our lives. And my wife, Sue, this year, working with our radio stations that we sold, really leaned on that word pivot right there. Rotary clubs have to pivot as well. You were forced to do things that you've never had to do before, just to stay alive, to stay in business. So here's one way you can do that. If you can figure out how to attract and engage younger members to help manage your tech, these are the people who will be able to help you with that arsenal of tech tools. Because we talk about, there's an expression, digital natives. These are people who grew up using the tools, as opposed to having to learn about new tools that are completely foreign to us. And have you ever thought about just posting a help wanted sign? You know, just putting out an ad to get people to help you with the things that you need to do, instead of just saying, we want younger members. Say, we need you to help us with our outreach in the community. We need you to help us figure out how we are going to run our meetings in the future, because we don't have the wherewithal, the ability to do that. These people are looking for something to do, but they don't know what it is that you need. And you know what you need, but you don't know how to do it. So the ability to blend those two things is really, really critical. Let's go through some of the things that you might be able to have at your disposal in tech that you can do in your meeting. And maybe you're already doing some of them. Maybe you see other people doing them, but you haven't a clue as to how to do it. Again, these are all things that are available to you right now. streaming your meetings on YouTube or Facebook, or posting the recording. One of the things that we learned in our Zoom environments this year was, no matter how accessible you tried to make the meeting, as that Anytown video showed you, there were always going to be people who had a conflict at 9 a.m. or at 6 p.m. and couldn't make it. So the most asked question was, is it going to be recorded? How can I watch it later on? Well, streaming the meeting or posting an archived recording of the meeting is the best way, because not only do you get the live audience, but you get the audience later on that wants to watch what you're doing. Just like this meeting this morning of District Assembly is recorded for all the people who may be busy on a Saturday morning. We put new member inductions online. We did them on Zoom. So we could show clubs that we are continuing to bring new Rotarians into the fold, that we've got new people. And you notice, all the people that we were able to bring in this year, and we had, I think we had more new members that we put in the district newsletter than I've ever seen in past years. This was a tremendous opportunity to get new people engaged in what Rotary does. There was a podcast that a state of Washington Rotarian created a few years ago called I'm a Rotarian, and I'm going to let you listen to a little segment that she hosted. She's the first voice you'll hear, with Jennifer Jones. This is an interesting segment from this. The podcast was like a half hour long, but this particular 1 minute segment kind of illustrates what I'm talking about this morning.
You're basically, your Rotary Club is 1.2 million people of all different languages, colors, backgrounds, whatever is now your local Rotary Club. Is that kind of melted in yet? Is that kind of sunk in at all?
Well, yeah, and I think that that's certainly been something that's built up over a couple of decades, but right now it's probably punctuated more than ever through the kind of virtual connectivity that we have. Through different platforms. It's just so not unusual to wake up in the morning and visit India, and then perhaps pop over to the Philippines, and then, in the afternoon, visit some friends in Scotland, and end the day with some friends in California.
So could your club do a podcast? Could your club do a video segment every week, an interview? I mean, all you need is a computer with a video camera on it, which is what we all have this morning on Zoom, and a microphone. It's become very easy to use technology in that regard to spread the word of what Rotary does. And this I'm a Rotarian podcast, I mean, this could be duplicated locally, regionally, and globally to tell people what Rotary is, because we're all still answering the question when we're out in the community, and we will begin to do more as the pandemic starts to abate. Rotary, what's that? Technology can be your friend to help answer that question. Detroit did a great series this year, their conversation with the author, and they got a ton of outside of Rotary people that were engaged in the program. It was a simple thing for them to do. It was a great program to put together, and it expanded the Rotary world tremendously. Fundraisers was always an issue, but part of fundraiser is fun, and the Rotary Club of LaSalle did their virtual trivia challenges. Great way to continue to raise money, continue a program that you've had before, but just move it online. And then the old 50-50 raffle selling ticket got new life in the Essex County clubs with the Catch the Ace. And they've given away a ton of money and made a ton of money, and selling tickets online is all they had to do instead of printing the tickets and trying to sell them locally. So there are a ton of ways that clubs were able to pivot, use technology, whether it's online ticket selling or whether it's doing a virtual trivia challenge that enabled you to do older things in a new way, traditional things in a new way. So what's the next big thing? Well, hybrid meetings are the next big thing. And the question is, what's a hybrid meeting? Why is this going to be the big thing? Why is it so important? Well, as more and more of us get vaccinated, and it's starting to happen, this enables the best of both worlds. Grosse Pointe had their first hybrid meeting last month. And you can't see it there, but they're in person, socially distanced, looking at a screen of Rotarians who weren't comfortable coming back to the meeting place yet. You know, we're all at different phases of this pandemic, and a hybrid meeting allows you to have the best of both worlds, if you will. Canada is in a different place than the United States with how it's reacting to the to COVID-19, and we've still got you know, a lot of people in Canada that need to be vaccinated. We still have a lot of spread of COVID. It's not over yet, but in some places it's been there are different government restrictions. A hybrid meeting allows you to have people meet online along with the people who meet in person. But that last bullet point there is really, really important. If you're going to do a hybrid meeting, you've got to make sure that you set up the folks who are watching remotely to feel as included as the people who are in the physical room. Because if the people at home feel like they're on a little iPhone screen instead of part of the conversation, it's not going to work the same for them. So the question with a hybrid meeting is, how do you find out who wants to do what? Excuse me, so you know how to do it. How about a quick member survey? You can set up a Survey Monkey, a free Survey Monkey account for your club, and create a 2 or 3 question survey in a couple of minutes. And if you're not sure how to do it, you can reach out to some of us tech people that are in the district. Myself, Sue has done Survey Monkeys before. Liz, we're all happy to help you create this, but find out how your members want to participate. Are you comfortable meeting in person yet? Are you able to meet in person yet? Maybe the time is going to be a different time that people want to meet in person. These are all questions that you could quickly ask, and you're going to have to, by the way, make this survey evolving, because one survey this week could be different than the results of the survey if you ask it in 6 weeks from now. So this is an ongoing process as we navigate through what we're doing with technology during the pandemic. So, you know, the gist of what is going on with technology in Rotary is that the organization is 116 years old, but the technology needs to fit the needs of the 2021 member and the member in 10 years from now. And if you're not able to adapt to that technology and to keep not only using the next best thing that comes along, but engaging people who are able to use it even better than we are, then you will remain the 116-year-old club instead of the club of today. There's a great web resources available for you throughout the Rotary world, including our own district website, rotary6400.org, that has many different resources for you, including a lengthy hybrid meeting piece that was put up and was also in the district newsletter for this month, April, that tells you all about the steps from start to finish of setting up a hybrid meeting. And with that, I thank you very much. I urge you to continue being flexible, pivoting, and using technology to reach more and more members and future members in your community. Thanks, and have a great district assembly, everybody.